Last time on All About Trains, we talked about power and control for model railroads, power packs, basically. Now that we know how to put together a train layout and we've got our power, now we need motive power. So this time on All About Trains, we're going to talk about steam engines. With me to explain the basics of steam engines and some history of steam engines in the United States is Paul Harwell. Paul, basically, what do you do when you think about steam engines? Where do you start?
Well, you may as well start at the beginning, Chuck. The first steam locomotive that was built for railroad operation was built over in England in 1802. This was the first steam locomotive, but it wasn't a successful design. It was way too heavy for the track surface of those days. Up until the 1815, 1820, locomotives of several different designs and several different mechanics and designers had all their own different concept of what a steam locomotive should be. And it was in its infancy stage, so everybody was right in their own little way. It wasn't until 1829 when a man named Robert Stephenson combined all of these appliances into one locomotive design. This was the famous rocket design that won the Rainhill trials and began to be produced for the first railroad in England. The first locomotive that ran in the United States was, of course, the Tom Thumb of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. This was the first one that pulled a train in the United States. From here, basically these first locomotives were what might be called a platform type. They looked somewhat like a hand car or just a wood platform that had 4 driving wheels that were connected to the steam locomotive, which either had a horizontal or a vertical boiler mounted on the platform. As the designs got more and more refined, a leading truck, which is a pair of wheels in front, helped guide it into curves and through curves, was added. It was also learned that these lead wheels, or pilot wheels as they're called, could support part of the weight of a locomotive, and thus it could be larger and more powerful. Through these years, up until the 1840s, 1850s, was basically the developmental years of the steam locomotive. Steam locomotives from about 1865 to 1890, this is the golden year of the iron horse. Locomotives of the basic types, which were the 440 American Standard type, or American for short, the 260 steam locomotive, which was called a mogul type, and the 280 consolidation type. What these classifications and numbers mean, this is the White classification for a locomotive. It was developed by a Dr. White many, many years ago. It's a system of classifying the different types of steam locomotive wheel arrangements so you can identify the individual types. A 280 consolidation type locomotive, it refers to 2 pilot wheels in front of the locomotive that guided into the curves, non-powered, 8 driving wheels, and then 0 trailing wheels.
So then
this
the
is
white,
a 280.
That's just the basic wheel arrangement.
That's just our basic way of identifying these locomotives. It's the most standardized. Okay, from here, the freight trains got longer and heavier, and the schedules were improved to where they were faster. Steam locomotives had to expand, become larger, have bigger capacity for steaming capability and running as far as speed. The locomotives grew larger and larger until about the turn of the century they were about as far as they could go in their present form. Okay. Right now I'd like to show you how a basic steam locomotive operates and all the parts on a steam locomotive. We have a diagram back here which we can do just that.
Okay, let's take a look at it.
Chuck, here's our diagram. Let me show you how a steam locomotive works. We don't show it here, but back here is the coal car or tender. This carries the water, which is heated and made into steam, which makes the train operate, and it carries the fuel, whether it be wood, coal, or oil. The fuel is put into the firebox and it is burned. This creates heat, goes through these tubes here, which are called flues. This is the boiler right here. It's completely injected full of water. When the heating surface goes through these tubes or flues, it heats up the water, making it evaporate into steam. Okay, the exhaust fumes come into what is called the smoke box and are exhausted out the smokestack, the chimney. Okay, the water, as I said, is heated into steam. It rises to the top into the steam dome. There is a throttle valve up here which is controlled by the throttle by the engineer in the cab. He opens this valve. This lets active steam into this tube. It is forced into the pistons, into the cylinders. This forces the piston rod back and forth. Okay, this, after it has been forced the piston, it exhausts out and up through this same exhaust tube, pulling with it the exhaust gases out the stack. Okay, this steam forces a back and forth action. This is connected to a main rod here. It turns the wheels around and around. There's 4 exhausts for 1 revolution.
Now this says Pacific or 462. Is this an early type of a wheel arrangement?
This, let me go ahead and explain what a Pacific is.
Okay.
462 by the white system, which we talked about, means 4 pilot wheels, unpowered, 6 drivers, which are the powered part of the steam locomotive, and 2 trailing trucks. The pilot wheels aided in getting into and through a curve. They support part of the engine weight, as does a trailing truck. It supports part of the engine weight.
When did this type of locomotive
All right, Chuck.
come in operation?
The Pacific or 462 type steam locomotive came about from around 1904 to 1910. As I said, it was basically a passenger locomotive. When the passenger trains changed from wood cars to heavyweight steel cars, they were much heavier, and increased patronage made them longer and heavier. This was extended into a 464 or a Hudson type, which is used along the New York Central Hudson River, thus getting its name Hudson. And 484 would be 4 pilot wheels, 8 drivers, and 4 trailing trucks. The larger engines kept getting larger from 1915 to about 1920. 1920 to about 35 is what we call the superpower years. The superpower era had a full-wheel trailing truck allowing a much larger firebox, more heating capacity. The steam locomotive could generate more steam, had more steam capacity, could run faster for longer times.
It's too bad we don't have an example of this somewhere that we could go take a look at.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, Chuck. We have a locomotive just like this, a 462 Pacific type, at what we call the Texas State Railroad. A bunch of friends of mine over there would just be dying to show it to you.
One of the best ways to study a steam locomotive is to look at the real thing. With me today is Blair Lavelle. He's the shop superintendent for the Texas State Railroad, and he's going to give us an explanation of how this steam locomotive behind us operates. Blair, where do we begin?
Let's start at the tender.
Okay.
Okay, your water and fuel is kept in this tender. Water on the outside and back, and that center section is an oil bunker. Your water comes out this line, comes up here and through this injector. The water then travels up this pipe, goes in through a boiler check into your boiler, where it circulates and is heated in this area right in here. This is your fire leg. Now back here, on the other side is your oil, which comes in, goes through a pipe, comes right up here where you see the fire. It goes into an atomizer and a blower, goes in here and creates your fire. Then the draft picks it up, carries it down through the boiler tubes. The smoke and the heat comes down the flues through the barrel of the boiler into the smoke box, where it exhausts through the stack. The draft is caused, I'll show you the valve in the cab in a minute, but when you're running, of course, the exhaust from your cylinders behind you is what exhausts because of the draw in the boiler. Here's where the engineer sits. This is the seat everybody wants to be in. This is your train brake. This is the one they use to stop the train. Applies the brakes on all the cars and the engine. This one only stops the engine. Applies the brakes on the locomotive only. This is your power reverse lever. Pull it to the rear and it runs backwards. Forward, it runs forward. And depending on the amount of steam you want, is where you put it on the quadrant. This is your sanding valve. Back to put the sand behind the drivers. Forward to put it in front of the drivers. And of course, this is your throttle. This is what you pull out, engages the throttle inside the boiler, which puts the steam out to the cylinders. You want to start out, you push this to the forward position, and just pull this out, and hopefully you'll leave.
Well, I worked all over this country, over this great land of ours. I've been in a lot of places, I've smelled a lot of flowers. I got money in my pocket, I got clothes on my back. I've seen a lot of good times looking down a railroad track. But when I hear a train whistle echoing through the hills, I'm gonna hang my light on a blue caboose and highball out of here. Blow that whistle, Barry, blow that whistle sweet. Make it echo through the hills, put me and Jim to sleep. Watch out for a broken rail, just keep her on the track. Blow that whistle, Barry, let 'em know we're coming back. Now we go to work for a railroad almost every day, hauling freight to Arkansas and places by the way. We got a jungle lunch and a coffee pot and a smile on our face. Got a clear track, good engineer, so what more could I say? Got my order signed, got an air test made, got a brakeman by my side. So let's hang our light on a blue caboose and ride, ride, ride. Blow that whistle, Barry, blow that whistle sweet. Make it echo through the hills, put me and Jim to sleep. Watch out for a broken rail, just keep her on the track. Blow that whistle, Barry, let 'em know we're coming back.
Now that we've seen how an actual steam locomotive works, and we've gotten a brief history on locomotives in the United States, I thought it would be a good idea to go to a hobby shop and get an idea of what you look for when you're buying locomotives. With me today to help explain that is Lauren Abrams. Lauren is the manager of a hobby shop in Dallas. Lauren, what do I ask you when I come in to buy a locomotive? Where do we start?
The first thing that we start is to find out which gauge or scale that you're interested in. Most people are interested in HO scale, and that's about 77% of the model railroaders who railroad are in HO scale. For example, this particular piece here in front of us is an HO scale locomotive. What we're going to ask you is find out whether or not you're interested in a particular prototype or a particular style of engine. And for example, this engine here is a Rock Island, or a Chicago Rock Island and Pacific 484. And the 484, like we learned before, was the 4 lead wheels, the 8 drivers, and then the 4 trailing trucks. This is an actual reproduction of this particular model. It's also a Northern, by the way, and this model is produced by Hallmark Models. Hallmark is an importer of brass, and they go to the problem of finding erection cards, diagram sheets, photographs, and they have a draftsman or an engineer who will draw up actual plans, blueprints of this model in half-inch scale. Then the plans are then shipped to Korea and Japan, or Japan, because they're made in both countries. And a model is then scale proportion reproduction. For example, there's a boiler, and the boiler is wrapped. There are castings made with lost wax castings. There are also stampings and coinings where they actually coin the item. So the importer or the model maker tries to make a reproduction, a facsimile, as close as they possibly can. There's also a wide choice of brass locomotives. And what I mean by that is there are different wheel configurations, as we learned before. I have another one here. This one is a Wabash 060. It doesn't have any lead trucks or any trailing trucks. It has 6 drivers. It is a switch engine. This particular engine would do nothing but probably switch cars back and forth in a yard, making up a train for a larger engine like this to pull it out on the main line. By the way, this Northern is a passenger engine because of the large size drivers. This has 80-inch drivers, meaning for fast speed. I also have a Santa Fe Mikado. The Mikado is a 282 wheel configuration with a 2 trailing truck and a 2 lead truck, but then the 8 drivers. And you can see the drivers are smaller than they are on the Northern. This is a freight engine. The reason for the smaller drivers is better tractive effort, much stronger. I only showed you 3 wheel arrangements, but as we learned before, there were several different wheel arrangements, and each wheel arrangement has a purpose. These are state-of-the-art models as far as the early 80s, meaning that the castings are more accurate. Unfortunately, though, the customer is going to say, well, why are they so expensive? Well, if you look at the model, you can actually see how much goes into it. For example, starting at the beginning, Our architect, our engineer, will draw one of these plans, and it takes anywhere from 400 to 500 hours to do research and the drawing on a single set of plans to do this. And what I mean by a set of plans is that he will draw both side elevations, he will draw the top, he will then also draw both sides of the tender, the top and the back. And if there's a particular casting that is specific for a prototype, such as the Rock Island, they will draw the specific, let's just talk about this feed water heater right on top here. If that is a casting that is not produced by one of the model railroad manufacturers, we will go to the trouble of drawing an accurate picture of that casting so they can learn how to cast it and make a master from our blueprints. In the early days of importing, say in the late 60s to early 70s, they used turnings, meaning they actually made these parts on a lathe instead of actually making a lost wax casting of it, where this is a photo etching type process where it's actually a little more accurate detail. Actually, a master is made. This boiler is photo etched, and what it is a flat sheet of metal. And then electronically, the photo etching will reproduce the bands and some of the detail along the body of the boiler.
Well, why don't we do all of this work in the United States? Why do they import?
Okay, the main reason is that the cost of labor in the United States is way too high. In Korea and Japan, unfortunately, what we call blue-collar workers literally work for pennies a day. Importing is also another problem that a lot of people don't understand. When these models come to the country, there is an importing duty tax, there is shipping and freight and handling charges, and all these things go into the cost of a model.
What about investment? Does this make a good investment then for me?
The idea behind investment, I'm going to tell you, is no. This is not a good thing to make investments in. For example, this engine is very expensive. It's over $300. You could take that similar amount of money and invest it in stocks or bonds or some sort of financial investment like that and get your returns much quicker than you can with this.
But I can't run my stocks and bonds on my railroad either.
Right, that's the whole purpose of model railroading. It's a hobby more than it is an investment. That's right. Now, one major reason why you would buy a brass locomotive over, say, a Bachmann or a Bowser or one of those is because of the running ability. And I've taken apart one of these engines. As a matter of fact, it's the same engine that is this Rock Island 484. And as you can see, it's truly a magnificent piece of work in the mechanism. It has an enclosed gearbox with a worm. This is called a worm gear. And there is an idler gear inside. And then there is a drive gear on the bottom. So it is a gear tower, and it is a gear ratio down for realistic speed. It also has what is known as a can-type motor. It's called a can because it's actually a cylindrical can, okay? This type of motor will give you good, strong, realistic running ability. Now, there's another reason why you can buy brass. You say, well, it's brass colored, and you asked the question about investment. The brass locomotive can actually be painted to the specific prototype's colors. And what I mean by that is we have an example here. That is a Missouri, Kansas, and Texas 282. Once again, another Mikado, but it has been painted and airbrushed. You asked about the investment. That's why I mentioned it, is that the brass locomotive, if you paint it, it won't detract from the value. It won't add to the value either. But instead of running a gold engine around the track, you have an engine that runs that's the right color running around, and it looks more realistic to have it painted up too. If brass engines seem too expensive for you, if that kind of money is way out of line, there is an alternative. The alternative is plastic. And I can't believe I'm standing on my tippy toes. The alternative is plastic and or pot metal. And I've brought a couple samples here to show you. These are ready to run. What I mean by ready to run, you literally take them out of the box, oil them up, put them on the track, and off you go. You're ready to run. Now, the same thing's true with these brass engines, but they're not painted. But most of these ready to runs come ready to run. This particular example is Mantua. Mantua has been around since the early 1900s, and they've been producing toy trains, and that's basically what they are ever since then. This is made of pot metal. Pot metal is a type of material, it's a conglomeration of inexpensive metals lead, zinc, magnesium, and the reason that they use it is that it's very durable. It has a lot of weight to it, and it's very strong. This particular engine that I've pulled out is a 464 Hudson type engine. There's also another brand which is rather popular, and that's Bachmann. Now, the Bachmann locomotive is a toy, and you can see by the color of it, it's not very impressive. It's kind of, the word is funky, is what I like to use. It is good for a youngster on a Christmas tree, kind of a circle around the edge of the board type layout, because it does have a smoke in it, it does have a light, and there aren't very many things that can go wrong with it. The one problem is, though, is that when something does go wrong with an inexpensive model like this, a plastic type model, they're very, very difficult and expensive to repair because parts are not readily available. I mentioned that, too. Let's go back to brass for a second. Parts are always available for these. All the different major manufacturers will produce repair and replacement parts, meaning detail parts, gearboxes, motors. Everything is available if something should go wrong with a brass piece. There's also one other brand of plastic, and they are a very good brand of plastic locomotives, but they're only available through mail order house. Right now, AHM used to sell, and AHM stands for American Hobby Manufacturers, used to sell their locomotives through dealers, but now they've gone to a direct mail type of selling. We do have a few samples left in the store, and this particular engine is a big boy. This is probably the largest steam engine made ever. It's a 4884. It is called an articulated, and an articulated locomotive is where the two sets of drivers literally articulate from one another, so that it gives you two locomotives in one and gives you twice the pulling power. AHM is a very good brand. It's a very good running brand. Limited on prototype, and what I mean by that is the shape and design of the boiler is very limited. You have a very few choice of railroads to choose from. That's why the advantage to brass, even though it's more expensive, you can get a wider choice of locomotives. Now, for the advanced modeler, and when I'm referring to the advanced modeler, I'm referring to the modeler who has at least worked with a screwdriver and a pair of needle-nose pliers.
Like me.
Like you. We have kits. Once again, there's the Mantua kit, which is a company that's been around for quite some time, and they produce locomotive kits. There's also Bowser, a recognizable green box. Bowser used to be a company called Pinline, and they've been around, once again, almost as long as Mantua has. A very good quality kit. And then there's model die casting or / roundhouse. People will call them MDC and people will call them roundhouse. It's both the same company. Now let's take a look at these kits. You can actually see the boiler is made with this inexpensive type metal, and you can see where it gets its weight from and pulling power. And there's the plastic tender and all the parts that it takes to build up this locomotive. Once again, this locomotive is very simple to build. You honestly only need a screwdriver and a pair of needle-nose pliers and an X-Acto knife, and you can put this locomotive together. Bowser is another type of locomotive kit, and it is a locomotive kit where the whole engine is made of metal, so it has even more weight and even more pulling power. It also has what is known as a Pitman 70 motor, and this is a very large motor and super strong. And I use that term super because it truly is. The cliche that we use is that this type of an engine will pull the paint off the wall. And the final one is model die casting. Model die casting is a similar kit to Mantua. It'll have some plastic and some metal parts in it. Now I'm showing you the different kits because you have a choice once again. You don't have to follow a specific prototype. There are several different kits available through each of the manufacturers, so that if you're trying to model a particular railroad, you can do so if the kit has that prototype features to it. If not, you can just pick up your own road name and model. Say, I like this engine and I like that engine over there, and you can model your own railroad.
What about people who have diesels, okay, and have never bought steam and want to get into that? How do you make the transition, if you will, between diesel and steam?
Well, there is a period in model railroading, and it is actually a period in the real times, where from 1945, let's say, up to about 1962, where the railroads actually used steam and diesels, and it was called the transition period, where the railroads were starting to pick up diesel units and starting to use them in place of the steam because they were more efficient. As a matter of fact, here in Dallas, there was a steam engine running at the Union Terminal all the way to 1962. Diesel started coming into focus in 1937, but there was a major transition period from about 1946 up to the early 60s, meaning that there was steam and diesel run at the same time. And this will allow the modeler to justify, and that's a very important term because you can justify a particular aspect of time on your railroad, and also it's quote-unquote a compromise. You can run steam and diesel on your railroad, call it the transition years, and get away with running both steam and diesel.
Okay, thanks, Lauren. Today we learned about steam. Next time on All About Trains, we're going to learn about diesels. Join us.
If you have questions concerning your particular layout's applications, visit your local hobby shop. They'll be happy to answer your questions.
Tonight at 11, animated discussions on Late Night America, a behind-the-scenes look at the IRS from David Burnham, author of A Law Unto Itself. Carol Lawrence discusses her battle with alcoholism and an ex-husband, and filmmaker Roger Moore talks about Roger and Me, all on Late Night America at 11 with guest host Charlie Rose.
Just put the finishing touches on this entertainment center, one of 13 new projects from the new Yankee Workshop. This kitchen work table turns out to be a favorite of our TV crew, and I know this rocking horse is going to be a favorite of my granddaughters. And for the serious woodworker, we have this chest on chest. That's coming to you right here on the new Yankee Workshop on PBS.
Saturday at 11:30.
This year, do it yourself with a brand new season of Home Time. Do it yourself with the new season of Home Time.
Saturday afternoon at 3:30.
Health Matters, the television series that can help you improve your health and perhaps prolong your life. We'll report on the latest advances in modern medicine with profiles of both everyday and extraordinary people to see how their courage and determination make them winners. Their stories, along with the advice of healthcare experts, can make a difference in your life. So watch Health Matters each week, your complete source of medical news and health information.
You're watching WTVS.
No, you don't. For quality work that counts, count on Northland Collision. And now for a limited time only, 25% off complete bump and paint jobs with selected colors. Northland Collision is open on Saturdays with convenient estimates available 9 to 3. Nearly 40 years of experience have given us a shining reputation. Ask your insurance company about us. Located on Woodward in Ferndale. Call 542-9707.
No one condones drunk driving, but if you've been pulled over, you have a right to the best legal representation. I'm attorney Sam Conoco, and I've been successfully defending drunk driving clients for over a decade. When you come to me for legal help, you get specialized, effective service at a fee each of you can afford. With tougher drunk driving laws and enforcement, it's more important than ever to get the best legal representation. Call me. I'm here to help you.
Call attorney Sam Conoco at 569-37.
Your heart doesn't work alone. Neither should your heart specialist. That's why the Henry Ford Heart and Vascular Institute brings together specialists in circulation, electrophysiology, angioplasty, research, heart and transplant surgery, and rehabilitation. Specialists from every area, including intensive care nursing, working together to give heart patients every advantage. The Henry Ford Heart and Vascular Institute. Ask your doctor or call 876-3400.
Michigan State takes on Indiana Sunday at 4, only on 7.
Raycom Sports and Entertainment presents Big Ten Conference Basketball. Brought to you by Bud Light, by Ford, by Pizza Hut, by U.S. Air, and by Gillette. We're at Chrysler Arena in Ann Arbor, Michigan, home of the defending NCAA champions. Today, it's the Northwestern Wildcats visiting the Michigan Wolverines. Hi, everybody. I'm Wayne Larrabee. Michigan is gunning for its 7th straight 20-win season. Northwestern trying to snap a 35-game Big Ten losing streak on the road, hoping the percentages catch up with them. Pleasure to be joined by Bill Hoskin. And Bill, that play on the road, it's got to figure in the psyche of a team that's lost 35 straight.
Well, it certainly does. They're kind of a catch-22. I think you gain confidence if you start winning, but you can't get confidence if you don't win. So Northwestern's really had difficulties on the road, but you know, they're coming off a win at home, and they're playing a club today that they played very well in Evanston. They were up by 7 in the second half before losing.
And, you know, Bill, Northwestern at the start of this season, the star caliber player was Walker Lambiat. He's the guy everybody targeted their defense for. Well, they've slowed Walker Lambiat. Hasn't had a huge year, but Rex Walters, a sophomore guard, has really come to the fore offensively.
Well, as teams prepare for Northwestern, the defense is set against a Walker Lambiat. And as you mentioned, Rex Walters just absolutely emerged, going 2 points a game last year, and this year his sophomore season. He's a real street fighter. He can take the ball to the hoop, and he can score the 3 as well.
And the Michigan Wolverines, being led by All-America Ramil Robinson, on a roll. They've won 4 of their last 5, including a 7-point win over Northwestern the first time. We'll return to the lineups after these words.
Right now, U.S. Air is offering low fares on some very special seats. Seats in the warm sunshine of Florida, California, Arizona, Puerto Rico, and the Bahamas. So if you're planning a vacation this year, all you have to do to reserve any one of these seats is call us and reserve one of ours.
Attaboy, Johnny. Attaboy.
Mitchell with the ball. Up to the right. Comes in.
Attaboy. Yeah, that's it.
To the basket. Mitchell shoots. Oh.
The board, Johnny. Use the board.
As a proud sponsor of the NCAA, Pizza Hut salutes all the Charlie Mitchells out there, because we know how hard it is not just to make it, but to make it great.
Seconds remaining, Eastern Regional Finals.
Mitchell, right side of the lane, jumps, shoots, he scores! Charlie Mitchell at the buzzer!
Attaboy, Charlie, attaboy.
Do I look like some little old lady who only drives to church on Sunday? I know what matters in a truck. I know this Ranger XLT has more room up here and more features than I'd get on the same kind of Toyota or Chevy. And it's priced lower, too.
Ford Ranger, #1 for all the right reasons.
I mean, I didn't buy the best-selling compact truck in America by mistake.
The best-built American trucks are built Ford tough.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and welcome to the University of Michigan's Chrysler Arena for this afternoon's game between Northwestern and Michigan. Now here are the starting lineups for today's game. For the Wildcats at forward, a 6'7" senior from Woodstock, Virginia, number 34, Walker Lambion. Michigan forward, a 6'7" senior from Rosemont, Illinois, number 20, Mike Griffin. Forward for Northwestern, 6'4.5" senior from Western Connecticut, number 44, Don Polite. Michigan's forward is a 6'9" senior from Grand Rapids, number 35, Loy Vaught. At center for Northwestern, 6'8.5" sophomore from Baldwin, Missouri, number 45, Evan Pedersen.